The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. George Case, talking ball in the zone. And we've got a full house of panelists to talk ball with. The only one we don't have is George Case. He'll be here soon. Chad Rubin is here, tells me that the lines are full, and he's had a hard time dialing in. Gene Hupmaker is here, David Hubler's here, Ronnie Rabinovich is here, and I'm here, Ralph Tycho, with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Tony D'Angelo, my godfather, has consented to guest for a very special reason. We have a returning person to the Comfortably Zoned airwaves. He is beloved former Boston Braves bonus baby in about the time that George Case's dad, George Case Jr., was playing in the majors. And I hope that George and Michael Dante can get together. Michael, welcome back to the airwaves.
Thank you very much. George Case was, had a lot of speed, played center field for the Washington Senators.
He did indeed.
Good ball player. Good ball player.
Okay. Well, let me tell you, if the all-time expert, George and David Hubler's here, David Hubler wrote a book about those times called Nats and Grays.
The Nats and the Grays, yep.
The Nats and the Grays. Everybody meet Michael Dante.
Hey, Mike.
George Case here,
Ralph. Oh, here we go.
We got you on the air. The only thing we're missing is George Case.
Well, I tried to call you, nobody answered, and then they cut me off, and then I tried again. So.
And you and we're happy you did. Let me tell you who's here, George. It's your show, so you should know. Michael Dante is here, along with Tony D'Angelo, to introduce his credits. You know Tony. Michael, you may not. Michael was a bonus baby in the time that your dad played with the Senators.
1950, the Boston Braves.
Yeah, I read that, Michael. Welcome to the podcast. I read that. I had a few questions to ask you, so we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. I'll be happy to have a discussion with you.
Okay, Ronnie Rabinovich is here. I wanted to tell you that.
Hey, Ronnie, how you feeling?
Good. I'm feeling good. Thank you.
Good.
I mentioned Chad Rubin is here. Gene Hupmaker is here. We have a lot collectively to ask Dante. If I forgot anybody along the way, I'm playing the poor man's Dick Schaap today. We have a panel of greats, and so I want to start out with George. Dante's credits too. You had a starring role in a movie, Dante, that you produced and starred in. And Tony D'Angelo, who brought Dante to these airwaves a few years ago, I've had the privilege of talking to him. This is the third time. Is going to tell you a little bit about Dante and his accomplishments. Tony D'Angelo.
Well, I mean, Michael is ultimately just a terrific friend, but just a legend in our town of Stamford, Connecticut, and a man who has accomplished the highest in just so many fields. But and Michael's really perfect for this show because he crosses over into so many things: movies, entertainment. authorship, and Michael had a long career, and this is something that, just in the whole legacy of Michael that's little known, of being a sports and celebrity interviewer in Palm Springs with some really terrific interviews. And it's like we never get a chance to talk about that, but really Michael was really the inspiration for myself and several others to do the same thing. And it's just one of those things about Michael that you never get to the bottom of Michael, which is a continuing fascination, but ultimately, a wonderful friend and just a leader and a role model.
Wow. Nice.
Well, thank you very much, Tony. I appreciate that, and dittos for friendship and a long-standing of communication and sharing my growth for all the professions that I've had the pleasure of and accomplishing, including my own radio show for 12 years and. Of course, in television, motion pictures, and a bonus baby. When I first left home at the ripe old age of 18, I was the most valuable player in the playoffs of the New England Newspaper League, which was held in Braves Field. And baseball, without baseball, I wouldn't be talking to you at this time. God knows where my life and careers would have gone. I'm so grateful for the great game that I love and participated and dedicated really my youth to trying to perfect as all ball players with the idealistic image and view of getting to the big leagues. But unfortunately I was injured, and then thanks to meeting Tommy Dorsey, he arranged a screen test for me at MGM Studios while he was doing the home show at the Pan Pacific Auditorium in Hollywood. I took a 2 weeks leave of absence from baseball, tested out at MGM, and never went back to baseball. 30 films, 150 television shows later, had my own radio show for 12 years, and I've been writing quite a bit and just finished my first novella entitled Winterhawk's Land, which is the sequel to Winterhawk, the picture that I played the title role in, starred in, played the title role, and was critically very successful and of course, financially very successful. So there were so many wonderful things and gifts and divine guidance that led me to the things I wanted to do, and I was able to do them well and survived all these years in the business. I started in 1955 on the contract to MGM Studios. So we're talking 7 decades of working in the industry as an actor, a writer, and, of course, my own radio show, celebrity talk show, which I recorded over 300 shows with the top stars in the world. So it's been a great run, and I'm just thrilled. I just I've received an invitation, and I'm so excited about it because it's another award in another category of what I do. It's the Ella Dickey Literacy Award, which is presented annually in honor of Marshfield's first librarian, Ella Dickey. She was a librarian there for 55 years, and she was a walking librarian, so they honor her every year in Marshfield, Missouri. They have a cherry blossom festival that takes place every April. This year, it's April 26th, 27th, and 28th. And
are you going back there this year?
Yes, they invited me and my wife, Mary Jane, will be their guests, one of their guests of honor, and I'll receive the Ella Dickey Literacy Award. So I'm not only an award-winning actor, I am now a award-winning writer.
Literate.
So that's something I never expected, and it's such an honor and a surprise and pleasure. They read my book. I had never really, I was not aware of their annual event, and received an email that they had read my book and want to honor me on April during the festival, 26th, 27th, and 28th. So it's really a pleasant,
congratulations
surprise.
from all of us.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we're thrilled for you at Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Listen, our time is not limited. I want to go around the room, starting with George Case, and because we're a baseball. This particular show on the network is pretty much baseball, and you have some wonderful baseball experiences, people you've met along the way. I want George to start out. We're going to go around the room and ask you any questions that they're interested in knowing about. It doesn't have to be about baseball, but I know the people that you came up in the Braves organization with, and I know your love and passion for baseball. So let's keep it to that for a little bit and start with George Case III.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Ralph, and I enjoyed listening to Michael and his background. And Michael, I wanted to ask you something. I did a little quick research when I knew you were going to be on. Were you associated at one point with the Washington Ball Club?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I went to the big leagues with the Washington Ball Club in 1955.
Okay.
I was unfortunately at that point they really didn't know very much about kinesiology, and I had injured my shoulder, but not to the point where it was terminal. I think my career was over. It just had to be treated properly, and they just didn't have the knowledge that they do today. Today, sports medicine is, in the last 15 years, has grown more than any medicine in the world.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing what they can do. I know when my dad was playing, he had to self-medicate himself most of the time. I mean, the trainers used to put, they put liniment on your sore muscle, and he made his own compression shorts out of an inner tube and that kind of thing. So, I understand completely what you're saying, and I was just curious what, year you were there, because if you were there in 55, I think Chuck Dressen probably was the Washington manager.
It was his only year that he managed the ball club.
Right. Okay.
And the center fielder at that time was Jim Busby.
Right.
And Jim Busby was like George Case, can run like a deer and chase him and run him down, and he was outstanding. And I always say, growing up, George Case was one that I always paid attention to when they played my favorite team, when they played the Yankees at the time, and Case would always be in the middle of something, stealing a base or making a great catch.
Well, he had some pretty good games, Michael, at Yankee Stadium. I've mentioned that before. That was one of his favorite places to play, and he always had some good games.
Center field in the Yankee Stadium, and he did it in fine style.
Well, thank you. And there were pretty good center fielders in the Yankee organization. A guy named DiMaggio, he wasn't too bad, and Mickey Mantle. I mean, they covered a lot of room out there in center field at Yankee Stadium, which, as you know, is huge. Yeah,
Joe was. When I was 9 years old, I wasn't a member of the Boy Scouts, and a couple of pals of mine were members of the Boy Scouts. So Troop 18, I'll never forget, and the Sacred Heart Church had 3 buses going to Yankee Stadium. They were the guests of the Yankee organization, and they were playing the Cleveland Indians. And my buddy said, "Hey, you got to come down. You know, got to see the Yankees play Cleveland." So I said, "Well, I can't. I'm not a member of the troop. I'm not a troop member." No, don't worry about it. One of our members, never forget his name, is Charlie McCary. He said, "Charlie's a member, and he can't make it." And all they do is they put out have a clipboard, and they call out the names, and you just say here, and then they don't look up or anything, and then just walk on the bus. They give you $1, and you walk on the bus, and we'll get you a cap and a shirt, a Troop 18 shirt, and you look the part, and you'd be perfect.
Your first acting gig.
Yes, I was at first acting began my acting career going on a bus.
But it wasn't a speaking part.
No, so you didn't get paid scale.
Oh, boy.
Right.
I kept my mouth shut, just walked and got $1. Now, the $1, in those days, there was hot dogs, peanuts, Cracker Jacks, ice cream. The $1 went a long way. Well, each got $1 when we walked on the bus and went to Yankee Stadium, and I looked down for the first time. We sat up in a third tier in the Yankee Stadium. I looked down, and I saw this marvelous athlete in center field, loping and making everything look easy, and it was Joe DiMaggio. And I said, I want to be a ball player. I want to be a big league ball player. Please, God, give me the opportunity to play and the desire and the love to play, and I did. I went home. My family would know where I was. I was not home for dinner. It was one of the rare times I was not there without them knowing where I was. They had contacted all the relatives and people in town that we knew. Nobody had known where I went, and of course, when I walked into the door after dinner was served at the house, and I had 3 sisters and a brother, and mom and dad, and there were 7 of us each night having dinner. And so yours truly was not there. So I said, Mom, Dad. I said, well, calm down, what happened? Tell us what happened. I went to Yankee Stadium and so forth, and I said, I want to be a ball player. And I said, I want to be like Joe DiMaggio. And he said, all right, okay, fine. And my dad said, and I said, Dad, if I really work hard for 8 years, I said, if I work hard for 8 years, I'll be a ball player. I'll be a big league ball player. Would you buy me a glove? Buy me a glove. The next day he said, you're going to work 8 years, 7, 8 years, the time you graduate and so forth, and you're going to be a ball player. I said, yes, Dad. He said, okay. He said, I can't get workers that work for me, it was in the produce business, to work 8 hours a day. And here's my son pledging that he would work 8 years and dedicate his time to becoming a ball player. And he went out the next day and bought me a glove, and he bought me a Marty Marion. Marty Marion was a great shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Right.
And that was the position I played. I played second and short, mostly shortstop. And, of course, 7, 8 years later, I signed a contract with the Boston Braves, a $6,000 bonus, which was the maximum at the time. You could not get a penny over $6,000. If you got a penny over $6,000, you had to sit 2 years on the bench of any major league ball club. So they gave me the maximum, and I bought my family our first automobile. My dad was in the produce business, so we had a truck for transportation, but never owned an automobile. So we went out and bought with the $6,000 for $2,500, a 4-door Buick, white wall tires, radio, heater, the most beautiful car you ever seen in your life. family car that made us all happy because our transportation then was became first class. So it brought a lot of joy. Baseball, that was the beginning of the joy and the love that was brought into my home and to my heart when I dedicated myself to becoming a big league ball player. Unfortunately, I injured my shoulder, but God had other guidance for me, and it was divine guidance all the way that he had in mind for me. And
Dante, you know what stands out was that your father, when you told your father what you wanted to do, even though, and I'm sure baseball, all of it was new to him, he didn't rain on your parade. He encouraged you to do what your passion was. And
exactly.
Without that, if he'd have held you back right there.
Oh yeah. He said, "No,
none of this would have happened."
Yeah, you're going to work or do something that he wanted me to do or anything. He didn't impose any of that. He said, "Well, if that's what you want to do and you're willing to dedicate all that time to becoming a professional ball player and wanting to be a big ball player, I wouldn't deter your dreams." And he didn't. He just encouraged me the whole time, and it was a blessing. Again, divine guidance. I could have gone in another direction and did the things that I shouldn't have done, and it would have deterred me from my.
Yeah, you could have gone into the clergy.
Yeah, anything, exactly.
Right.
Oh, we had that with the church, and they were always trying to encourage us because I was an altar boy.
Oh, yeah, that would have been.
I was an altar boy for a couple of weeks, and that didn't work out with me. The Latin got to me.
It doesn't for a lot of folks, Dante.
Yeah, the Latin got to me. I couldn't perfect the Latin that was required. But it was. It's a journey. My journey. Of course, I wrote my autobiography, and it's a journey beginning with baseball and right through show business up until now. We have to add the Ella Dickey Literacy Award. So by the way, the autobiography I've sold well over a couple of thousand books myself. I don't know what the publisher and Amazon, what they've sold, so forth, but we've sold well over a couple of thousand.
How could the folks get your book, Dante? I call you Dante, but Michael.
It's they could write to me to Michael Dante Enterprises Inc. Box 883. Rancho Mirage, California. That's two words, RANCHO, capital MIRAGE, California, 92270. And just request a book. The autobiography is $30 plus $6 shipping and handling.
And I assume you'll autograph it for him?
Yeah, autograph. That's the only way you can get an autographed copy is through me. Yeah, not through Amazon or the publisher. Those are not autographed. If you buy it through them, it's a little cheaper, but you can't have an autograph. There's no autographed copy. And then my book, my first novella, which is Winterhawk's Land, the sequel to Winterhawk, the film that I played the title role, as I mentioned earlier, is a journey. It's a wonderful story, a continuation of what had happened at the end of the first book, first movie, and the book is a continuation of the girl, the woman that comes off with me to live with me and leave her family and to live marry me, and we have a son in the story, and it's a wonderful story. It's the railroad wanted and took, without negotiations, 10, and this is authentic, 10 miles on each side of the track when they were building the railroad from the East Coast to the West Coast, and going through the Blackfoot territory, and would have darn near created a genocide, because they killed the buffalo for sport, and the buffalo was food, clothing, and shelter for the Native Americans. So it was he didn't, story-wise, he didn't stop them, but he deterred them for a good period of time. So it's a good yarn with wonderful sketches in it by David Powell. David Powell is a wonderful artist, and he gets anywhere from 15 to 35,000 a watercolor or a sculpture piece, and he volunteered to do the sketches in the book, and they're wonderful sketches because they lend to the sequences of each story. The introduction of each character is a visual, so the reader has a visual of all of these people, including the railroad president and on down. And it's a good, wonderful yarn, and we're doing very well with it, and I'm so proud of it. And believe it or not, I'm just finished my third book, Six Road Home, which is another Western about six horse soldiers that muster out after the Civil War, and they come home. They're going home. They survived the 4 years fighting against the North, and they survived and go home to what? That is contemporary as I'm talking to you now, because every soldier that spends time and putting their life on the line and thinking about returning home, there's a lot of doubts and fears and cautious anticipation that they it might not be the same, and all of those conflicts that enter their minds, and it's contemporary soldiers coming home now from Afghanistan and Iraq and all over the world. So sure. It's I won't tell you. You go into it's lengthy, and it's a good story with a different ending, and it's not so riding off into the sunset type of premise. So it's Six Road Home will be my next novel, which will be out should be out this year as well.
Wow.
So
Well, hey, let's get back to baseball just a little bit, Dante.
Sure,
you
absolutely.
mentioned Marty Marion. We happen to have a great Cardinal fan here.
Oh, wow.
Gene Huntmaker, not only a Cardinal fan, does a podcast on the Cardinals on this very station.
Uh-huh.
And he'd like to talk to you about Marty Marion. Marty Marion.
Yes, Marty Marion was the 1944 MVP despite his 260-something batting average over the man.
That's right.
And,
he had a wonderful range. He was 6'4" and he weighed about 175 pounds. And he was as smooth as silk. He just and he played the most shallow shortstop. Now today they play on the grass in the outfield with these tremendous arms, great athletes. That are infielders today. They're acrobats, most of them. And but Marty played shallow. He played shallow, so he made a lot of those little nubbers and squibbers in the infield. Made those plays look easy because he played shallow, and had a very accurate, good arm, but his range was incredible, and he really set the trend for the tall, rangy shortstop, which I was. I was 6'2", but I was a little heavier than that. But he was very special. He was a joy to watch.
What position did you play, Michael?
Shortstop. I played short and a little bit of second base.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask you, Michael, when you said you had an arm problem, did you have an arm problem from playing short, making a throw from the hole between short and third, or did you hurt it before that?
Yeah, it was I had a little bit of I hurt it in the gym throwing a basketball, but that wasn't much. And then when I went to spring training, I injured it more. It was a little cool, and I wasn't quite warmed up properly. It was a combination of a couple of things that they didn't know anything about. As a matter of fact, it kept giving me diathermy, which was putting fire to fire instead of cooling it down.
Instead of icing it, right.
Yeah, right, exactly. Today they ice it. The first thing they do with any injuries, they pack it with
George,
with
your
ice.
dad had a shoulder problem as well. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
he did. That's why I was curious with Michael. I mean, the shoulder for a ball player is tough because my dad was 4F in World War II because of shoulder separation. And I know if you're playing shortstop and you've got a problem with your arm, I mean, there's a lot of deep throws. You got to make it short. And, if you've got that problem, I mean, that's tough for somebody like yourself to try to overcome because there's no way to, at second base you can cheat a little bit because you got a much shorter throw, but at shortstop, you really got that long throw to first base.
You go in the hole and you got to make the play over the top.
Right.
See,
exactly.
When I threw over the top, that's when it really bothered me. And instead of really resting and getting proper treatment, I kept playing with it and it kept getting worse.
Yeah.
And then until I had an operation, and then after the operation, and it was coming around. Of course, I was invited to the big leagues with Washington Senators, and I had a good chance of making that ball club because their infielders were getting on in age. They had Eddie Yost and Petey Reynolds at short.
Right.
Pete was losing his range, and I had a lot of range and a good accurate arm. That was my asset going into. I wasn't that when I first started.
Dante, if you only had confidence in life, huh?
Yeah. Boy,
you were probably Dante. Michael, you were probably throwing too if you were at short with my very good friend, the late Mickey Vernon, who was playing first base for Washington.
Oh yeah. Oh, I knew Mickey very well.
Right.
And Mickey was a very good hitter, wonderful hitter.
Yeah, he was. And Mickey and my dad have been lifetime friends. And Mickey passed away a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. Yeah,
right.
I know.
But I was just curious because if you were playing at that time in '55, working out with a ball club, you definitely would have been taking infield and throwing to Mickey at first.
Yeah, but they had a good array, but a veteran ball club. My roommate was Mickey McDermott, the left-hander.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
The great southpaw pitcher, right?
Yeah, he had the expression goes, he had a $1 million arm and a 2-cent head. Yeah, he loved a good time. He was a sweetheart. He was one of the kindest and nicest human beings I ever met in my life. But he was self-destructive. He liked to drink a little bit, and I drank milkshakes, and he was drinking other things. And Mickey was not the greatest roommate to have because they were always watching him because he had the tendency of coming in late, out drinking and having a good time. But he was so talented. And he wrote a book, as a matter of fact, and the book was Funny Thing Happens to Me on My Way to the Hall of Fame. And, he would have been a Hall of Famer because he had a $1 million arm. Boy, when he came up, he was about 17 years old, 18 years old with the Red Sox. He had already pitched 2 no-hitters for Louisville, their AAA ball club, and they brought him up. and Mickey was, destined for the Hall of Fame, but he didn't take care of himself, and but he hung around in the big leagues long enough, and he was a good hitter. He was one of the best hitting pitchers in the major leagues at the time. He pitched it a great deal, and it was really a very, very popular, nice guy. He was the one that introduced me to Tommy Dorsey. And Tommy, as I mentioned before, arranged a screen test when he saw me I was doing a dress rehearsal for a play, Golden Boy, at the University of Miami of Florida in the off season, and he introduced me, and then Tommy.
Is that Sammy Davis in that?
No, Tommy Dorsey.
No, I meant
he was. He said, Michael, he said, look, you got it. He said, you're wonderful. You got great presence on stage. You have a wonderful voice, and you're a good actor. And he said, what you would learn in front of the camera, he said, you would be a big star in the film business. He said, you'll do very well. And he said, I want to offer you a choice to a screenplay. I'll arrange a screenplay for you, a screen test for you out at MGM. I know all those people. I was on the contract there for a lot of years, he said, and it's up to you. He said that I helped quite a few people in my lifetime, but there was one in particular he did very good, and I think you're going to do very good yourself. His name was Frank Sinatra. So you take it from there, and it's your decision. We're going to be at the home show for 2 weeks at the Pan Pacific Auditorium, and during that period of time, I can arrange the screen test. So you make up your mind. Here's my itinerary. We'll be in touch. I want a progress report to see how how your arm responds in spring training with the Senators. As a matter of fact, he said I'll be doing a couple of gigs there. I'll be doing one-nighters up and down the east and west coast of Florida, and we got 2 venues to do there. And there was no Disneyland in those days. It was Rollins College and the Air Force Base. So Orlando Air Force Base. What you did, true to his word, he kept in touch. He came out and worked out. He loved to work out with the ball clubs when he was in town, any big league town or even a minor league town. As long as he can go out to the ballpark, that was his exercise. He loved baseball as much as he loved his horn. So he invited the ball club to the venues at the Air Force Base and the Rollins College. So I became very popular. I was the most popular player at the camp at the time, because now they're all talking to each other about me being an actor and going to Hollywood and possibly going to Hollywood and possibly making a ball club. So I had a lot going for me, and they were really encouraging me. And at the time, they had 2 great prospects there in the ball club the same year: Harmon Killebrew at third base and Bobby Allison in center field. So we were the 3 prospects that had a great chance of making the ball club. But my arm wasn't quite ready. I took the 2 weeks leave of absence, and again, the dear Lord's guidance guided me in the proper direction, and everything turned out great.
Dante, I'm going to be serious. Was there ever a time when you doubted yourself? Seriously.
About
your confidence. But in life.
Baseball or show business?
In life.
No, I always believed that I had God's blessings and guidance as long as I dedicated myself and had the discipline to do the right thing. I always thought if I kept working hard and I kept getting the praises. The rewards were following me, but I wasn't in the big leagues yet. So as an actor, same thing. So when I had the blessing of being on probably the only actor, they tell me, that was under contract to 3 major studios. And I was not only on the contract at MGM, it was later on the contract to Warner Brothers, and then later had a 5-picture deal at 20th Century Fox. So
I guess the answer to that would be no.
Yeah. I kept working. Even though I was busy working, I went to my workshops. We had theater workshops, and I kept working on my weaknesses. That thanks to baseball, that when you're an infielder, you never stop developing your hands. You keep working on the things. I kept working on the things that I had problems with. I always, in the beginning,
Dante,
I had
do you
problems.
follow the game today?
Oh, every game. I watch every Angel game and Dodger game I could watch on my television set.
Then I'm gonna ask Chad Rubin, who's a little younger than most of the panelists here, if he wouldn't ask you questions about how the game was different in back when you played, or whatever he's curious about. Chad Rubin, Michael Dante.
Hi, Chad.
I just have one question, actually. Were you awestruck by the people you were playing with?
I beg your pardon?
Were you impressed with the people you were playing with? I mean, you talk about Joseph.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And these are your
gee whiz. Every time Harmon Killebrew, in the beginning, he played third base. He wasn't a great fielder. He didn't have a lot of range. He didn't have a great arm. And all of us, and regardless of where you were working, if I was getting ground balls from the coach, you'd hear, every once in a while you hear, whack! And you look up, and he hit. I've never seen anyone with a higher arc of home runs that he hit. His balls were not shot line drives out of the ballpark. They were moon blowers. You could hit him so high and far that it just was incredible. He had tremendous power, and a wonderful, wonderful guy. Became a great friend of mine. I played in his golf tournament in Scottsdale for 10 years, consecutive years, with all the ball players and athletes that he invited to play. And he was very special. And I knew that Bobby Allison, played center field. I knew Bobby had it. He had great speed. Later he put on weight and became, he had some sock, and he became a good RBI man and had good speed. And he went from center field to left field. But the game today, Chad, for me, it's changed tremendously. It's a different ball game. The bunt is almost obsolete. No, they just man on first and second, nobody out. Everybody's a three-run homer threat today, which really bothers me, because you got to play. If you don't have a winning ball club, run productive ball club, you got to play small ball. You got to move your runners over. You got to play hit and run. They don't do that anymore. It's lay back. If a guy now is getting a $5 million, $10 million raise, if he hits 219, 220, 230, and hits 20, 25 home runs and knocks in 70 runs, well, he gets a $5 million, $10 million raise. Whereas before, you better hit 300. An infielder that hit 250, 240, 250, and then knock in 80, 90 runs, he was back in the minor leagues. You had to hit upwards of 260, 270 to make sure you got a job for the next year, and you better keep your second job available when the season was over, because the salaries, as you know, were peanuts compared to what they're making today. It's all about money, and these guys feel that, well, I can make a hell of a lot more money if I hit 20 home runs and hit 240 rather than hit 260 or 270 and knocking 40 or 50 runs. If I could hit the 240 and hit the 20 home runs and knocking 70, 75 runs, they got to give me a $5 million raise. But what I get a little tired of listening to is when they get down to the playoffs. They get into the playoffs, or let's say the last month of the season, dog days, all the dog days. Now you're fighting for the pennant and so forth. You worn out your bullpen. The guys are tired. The arm, only so many throws an athlete can have with the same velocity that he started with the first month or two. And I hear a manager say after his closer gets bombed in a winning situation and loses the ball game, and they said, well, why didn't you leave your starter in for another inning? He was pitching real well. He said, well, my setup man, that's what we did. And my closer, they got us here, and that's why we're here, because they got us here at this point. Well, no, I disagree. They got you there, yeah, but they're tired and worn out. Now you have to use psychology and talk to your bench manager and say, well, you know what? I think he's lost a little bit, an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches off of his fastball, and they're hitting his fastball now where they weren't hitting it at the beginning of the year. So he's lost a few inches, and the velocity isn't that there. He has to be aware of psychologically that's what's happening, physically that's what's happening, rather than saying, and protect himself and say, well, he got us, that's how we got there, that's how we're here. Well, you worn them out. Your setup guys are worn out, and your bullpen, your closer is worn out. So a manager has to now just think a little bit more about what happens what condition the athlete is in the last month or two and so forth. You could start resting a ball player in the first month or the second month of the season. You don't have to wait till September to give a guy a rest. You give him a rest the first month, the end of the first month, the end of the second month. You give him a couple of days off and so forth. That's why you have utility infielders and a fourth outfielder. But I think the game has changed so much. It's just it's all about a setup man and your closer. If you don't have a good couple of setup men and a closer, there's no way you're going to win. You can't win without your bullpen. And the manager's psychology, their philosophy is today, give me five, maybe 6 innings from my starter, then the ball game is mine. See? He then takes over, and it's his strategy with his setup men and then the closer. So the emphasis is on that, and not so much on the fundamentals of bunting and
getting the guy over, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the pitcher.
You don't see much of that.
How much a pitcher can help himself if he can bunt. I look at pitchers, and they can't bunt.
They can't bunt.
I'm watching, pitchers, you've got to say to them, and there's 2 or 3 of them, 4 of them, I'd say about a half a dozen that are excellent bunters. And I'll bet they win a game or 2 each year because they're able to sacrifice a runner over from first to second or second and third.
But only in the National League.
Yeah,
right.
Only yes, of course. Because you have your
and when they play interleague ball, there's more and more interleague ball being played. So pitchers do need to hit occasionally. I want to before I get to Ronnie Rabinovich to talk to you about Jackie Robinson. Ronnie was a friend of Jackie Robinson, a personal friend of Jackie Robinson, and I want you two to meet. But I want David Hubler and you, Michael Dante, to talk a little bit about your Yankee fandom. You both share that in common when you grew up. Michael, I'd like you to meet David Hubler.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hi, David.
Are you from Stamford?
Stamford, Connecticut. See, we were only as a matter of 50 minutes from the Yankee Stadium.
Right. I lived up on Strawberry Hill Avenue for a while.
Oh my gosh! Well, that's where the name of the street that's named after me, Michael Dante Way, was Prospect Street, which I walked up, and Prospect Street ran into Strawberry Hill.
Yeah, it was we were up at the top of the hill there. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Stanford High School is located there. And now the Prospect Street, is also known as Michael Dante Way. And that was a thrill to be a street named after me and my honor. And having walked 3 years up and down that hill, and I lived way near the old Greenwich line on Fairfield Avenue. So I walked 3 or 4 miles a day to and from school and played all the sports and go without eating or anything snacks afterwards and get home at 4 or 5 o'clock after practice, baseball, basketball, and and never thought about the mileage I put on walking to school, walking back, and so forth. So I guess it kept me in shape, and that was an important part of being an athlete. And I never stopped. People have always asked me, said, "How do you stay in shape?" And I said, "Well, I never got out of shape. I always disciplined myself, and I jogged for 45 years. My knees are shot, but I paid the price. I know that that would happen to me later on in my life, but I enjoyed the journey and the camaraderie I had with my friends and jogged for many years. But really, getting back to Stanford, and now you rang a bell when you knew. And did you live in Stanford at all?
I lived there for a little more. I lived there for a little more than a year. I was teaching high school English at Wilton Senior High School, and I was the freshman baseball coach and assistant coach for the varsity during that year. So I mean, Wilton was a bit too high end for most of our school teachers, so we all had to live somewhere else. Well, Stanford,
I see.
Stanford had reasonable, rents, and Strawberry Hill Avenue was it was a nice area.
Well, when I grew up, it was the only high school, Stanford High School. Now they have three, maybe even 4. I think they have a Catholic high there now, so they've got enough of high schools there for the other what would I say areas around that like Norwalk and some of the borderline Greenwich students can attend the high schools that are close by now. That never, certainly weren't there before. So the population there has increased tremendously. So they haven't the demand for 4 high schools now. We only had 1, and it was well over 2,000 students.
Yeah, when you did that,
I think we've been joined by Michael Preminger.
Hey,
correct?
Hi.
Hey, Michael, I'd like you to meet amongst our panel. Your show is coming up. We're going to do Bronx Roots in a moment with David Hubler. But please sit in a little bit. Meet Michael Dante, Michael Preminger.
Hello. Michael, how are you?
You're in the
Michael?
same business. You're in show business.
There's no business fight.
We're talking a little baseball, and we're to the point where Michael is going to talk about Michael and and David Hubler are going to talk about their Yankee fandom.
Well, I was going to ask that story you told earlier in the show about going on the trip with the scout troop. The Yankees used to have a program called Yankee Juniors, and I remember busloads of kids would come in and they'd sit all the way up in the third deck up on the
That's right.
third base side, and most of them were wearing, the T-shirts or whatever from the organization. And they did that for a good number of years. I was wondering if that was was that the program that you participated in?
I think so, because I was never a joiner type of thing, personality. I was always interested in doing getting involved in baseball, and I did everything: football, basketball, boxing, in variety, and not part of any of the organizations. But I was aware of my buddies some of them being involved at the Boy Scouts. So they did have programs, and it was a wonderful privilege to introduce the youth to the great sport of baseball. So they supply the buses, and $1 went a long way. God, I remember that $1. That had peanuts and popcorn and ice cream and Cracker Jacks. And
for $1?
Amazing. Yeah, everything was a nickel or 10 cents. And
right.
So we were treated royally, and they were from time to time treated royally 3 or 4 times a year. And it was interesting because here is now playing against Cleveland had great ball clubs at the time, and the game that I saw for the first time, Bob Feller was pitching. Now Bob Feller and Joe DiMaggio. Now Joe became a very good pal of mine, very good friend of mine for years, and to think that here's a 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid for the first time, the Yankee Stadium, watching the Cleveland Indians, Bob Feller pitching, DiMaggio in center field, and Joe always hit. He hit Bob Feller. I think his lifetime batting average against Feller was about .350. He hit that fastball, a great fastball hitter, and that day he had a home run, a double, and a single, and threw a man out at third base. I'll never forget.
Wow.
And Joe loved westerns, and how I got to meet Joe and become good friends. He had a bocce tournament in Las Vegas that he hosted. A bocce tournament. Imagine that in one of those huge hotel. I forget it was one of the entertainment centers that they had there that facilitated 3 huge tennis courts, and he had every Italian delicatessen that you could think of, plus fruits and vegetables, olive oil. What gifts we had! I had brought 2 boxes back to my room, but the beginning of it was Joe invited me. He was a fan and had the host that he worked with him get in touch with me and invited me to Las Vegas. I was living in Encino at the time, and I was invited, and they had wonderful group of actors and ball players. Matter of fact, my partner in the bocce game was Ralph Branca.
Wow.
Ralph passed away, a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
Wonderful, what a great pitcher he was. You look at his stats, everybody remembers that home run ball they hit to Bobby Thompson. They threw to Bobby Thompson, but you look at his stats, he had great numbers. He threw up great numbers while he was playing with the Dodgers.
One of the most winning Jewish pitchers that ever ever lived, and that's a long, long story that turns out that Mr. Branca's mother was Jewish.
Oh,
really?
Found that out.
I didn't know that.
Found that out when he was in his 80s.
Oh,
really? I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Kidding.
Yeah. He was, Ralph, it was fun. We had, matter of fact, we finished third. We won $2,500 apiece. I set a precedent. When we received the $25, I donated half of it, and laid the guilt on everybody to donate half of the money back that they won, first and second place and first place and second place. So we had a grand time, and that was the beginning of our friendship. And for 10 years, I played it in the golf tournament. The pharmaceutical company, Warner Lambert sponsored a tournament that was just so opulent you couldn't imagine it. It flew everyone first class, Hall of Famer, ball player. I think I was one or two of the only actors invited, actor, ball player. And Joe, I couldn't sit, my wife, Mary Jane, we couldn't sit anywhere but as soon as I walked in the room, Michael, come over, sit here, and sit with Joe and so forth. And we became close pals, and over the years, that lasted about 10, 11 years. Well, 1 year we played in Florida, and 1 year in California. So,
Michael, would you tell us something about Joe DiMaggio that we might know as just being outsiders to your world?
Very interesting, a wonderful story. And about a great athlete. It happens to be Jewish. Sid Luckman.
Yes.
We were having lunch. We finished our first day. This was in Florida, and we finished the first round. And they had a beautiful, huge buffet. Anything, fish, fowl, beef, anything you wanted to drink, and so forth and so on. And beautiful day. The golf was great, and the hotel, the facilities, everybody had just anything was so opulent, and everything was first class. And I was walking back to my room. I just had finished my luncheon, and wanted to go back to shower and so forth and relax a little bit. And I was walking. I'll never forget it. It's just I'm talking to you now. That image of and the view of me walking by the swimming pool, looking on the other side of the swimming pool, and I hear him say, Michael.
Yes.
And he called my attention, and I was Joe sitting, by himself. Now, he didn't sit over and have the buffet that everybody else did. Joe liked his privacy, and for some reason, he wanted to sit there and be alone. But he called me, and I called me to the table. So he said, sit down. Come on, sit down. What are you going to have? And so forth. And I said, well, Joe, I had everything and so forth. I'll have a cup of coffee. We sat and chatted for a while. And then we both were facing the other side of the pool at this point. And then a gentleman in tennis, a beautiful white tennis outfit with a lovely tan, walking toward us. And he walked up close, and he was so polite. I'll never forget how well-mannered a gentleman he was. He walked up close. He said, excuse me. He said, I'd like to introduce myself. And he said, I don't know if you remember me, Joe. He said, but I certainly remembered you and what you did for me many years ago. And he said, and you, I want to introduce myself to you, young man, talking about addressing me. And he said, Joe, if you remember me, Sid Luckman. And Joe said, of course I remember you. Sid, oh, God, come on, sit down. And I said, I'm Michael Dante, and so forth and so on. He said, no, I don't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to. He said, Michael, I want to tell you a story. I want to share this story with you about Joe DiMaggio. He said, when I was having some great years in Chicago with the Bears, he said I was the president of this youth club, and these kids were tough kids from the north and south side of Chicago, and every year we'd have a banquet. There'd be a banquet, a dinner party, and we'd invite a special guest. And he said, you know, Michael, what he did, I put in a phone call to the Yankee Stadium to get a hold of Joe DiMaggio, and I left word with the office, and please, Joe DiMaggio, if you would get in touch with me, left a number and so forth, to return my call. I would like to speak with him about something, about a guest appearances. And I said, sure, well, we'll do that. We'll have Joe get in touch with you. Well, he did. A couple of days later, he called, and I said, Joe, would you be our special guest for our annual dinner? Our boy, it was the boys' club, and he said, I'd love to. We'd love to have you. And when they heard that I was going to invite you, they all just were really, really so thrilled that you would be the guest of honor. And Joe said, he said, I'm going to be in Japan. And he said, I'll be in Japan with Lefty, what was it, Lefty Grove? I think it's
Gomez.
Yeah.
Lefty Gomez?
So he said,
Lefty Gomez.
I'll be in Japan. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll divert my trip. I'll stop in Chicago, and I'll be there. And he said, Sid, you got my word, I'll be there. You can count on me being there. He said, and Sid said, I never forgot what when he walked in that room with those kids, what they did. I'll tell you, I could have had them, march on Suribachi. He said it was unbelievable. Those kids were ready to do anything in the world I wanted them to do, or Joe wanted them to do. He was just their hero. And I'll never forget Joe did what he did for me to make that event the most popular event we've ever had. And he
told you that story in front of Joe.
He went out of his way
right?
to come there to be the guest of honor.
He told you that story in front of Joe.
In front of Joe. He addressed it to me.
How did Joe react?
Now, here's the third act. Here's the third act of that story. He said, now, you see those two buildings over there? And he said, I'm not boasting about the buildings. He said, but I own a good part of those buildings, and I have two guest suites. Because he goes back, he said, I go back and forth from Chicago and here, spend my winters down here. And he said, but one suite is always available for my friends. And he said, Joe, I know you have a place here. And he said, you're welcome anytime, or if you have any friends and so forth that would like to stay as long as you want. And he said, it's available to my friends and you, Michael. He said, anytime you're here and coming this way, he said, all you have to do is call this. He handed me a card to Joe, and he handed a card to me. He said, you're my guest here anytime, and I'd love to see you. And he said, I wouldn't impose on your time. He said, you're not obligated to see me and so forth, but I'd love to take you to dinner and make some wonderful talk about sports. So here, and he said, now, I'm sorry, I hope I didn't take up your time. He said, but Michael, I wanted you to know what kind of a guy Joe DiMaggio is. I'll never forget what he did for me and those kids. And he said, he said, take care, hope to see you soon. And that was the last time we ever saw him. this great athlete, and he was a Hall of Famer in his own right. Was so humble. He was so humble. I couldn't believe. I felt like I knew him 100 years. How warm and embracing he was. What a great athlete and a wonderful man.
If it weren't sports, Michael, if it weren't baseball in particular, because acting was down the road, what would have been your choice avocationally? What would have you gone into?
What is sports? I would say that I would probably be in the construction business. I did construction work for the DeLeo brothers in Connecticut. They were all ex-athletes, and they had there was about 5 brothers, and they were in the construction business, and I worked for them, and I loved doing mason work. I loved building. I could make sidewalks and do bricks or lay bricks and lay blocks and do things like that. And they were very good paying jobs in those days. And I liked construction. I liked to watch and to build something. And mason work appealed to me. So I might have, and I was offered jobs and positions, like eventually be a foreman and do head a crew. So there was a future there because I was pretty good and pretty quick. You have to be good and fast, and the quicker and the better you were, the more money certainly you made for the company or made for yourself. So I think I might have gone into construction.
Right.
But I come from coaching. Coaching maybe is something I would have done that for on an amateur level. We had ball clubs there in town, that amateur ball clubs were very good ball clubs with a lot of good ball players and ex-professional ball players that played in the Twilight League. It was a Twilight League, which I managed. When I came back from baseball, I managed the league ball club, couple of ball clubs, player manager. So that certainly appealed to me.
Michael Preminger, if you would be kind enough if you have any questions for Michael Dante.
No, I don't. I really don't. Other than where in Encino did you live?
I live in on White Oak. White Oak cutoff that went back in. I live just a block away from Ephraim Zimbalist and Mike Connors and John Wayne. I had a lovely little house there, a dead-end cul-de-sac, and across the street lived Mike Douglas lived for 2 months. Only 2 months he lived there, he and his wife. He had moved there from Cleveland, and I was, we were very friendly, and I was driving up to my circular drive. I had a nice circular driveway, got out of my car, and across the street, Michael Douglas was working in his yard, puttering around and clipping flowers, and it was a beautiful summer day, and he called me over, and he said, Michael, come on, how are you doing? How's everything? I'm following your career, and I'm so happy that you're doing well. And Michael was in the throes of changing his career. He went from radio in Cleveland to some television, and then went out to Hollywood and knew that's where the action was. And this happened 2 or 3 times, and we talked and exchanged lemonade. I remember that one particular day we were talking. We sat on the porch that he had of his house, and he got a phone call, and his wife came out and said, well, Michael, you got a long-distance call from Philadelphia. And he'd gotten a call from Philadelphia, and he was on the phone maybe 5 minutes. And he said, came back, and he said, Michael, I finally got this phone call from Philadelphia. They want me to I got to take a Red Eye. He wanted me
you mean
right
Mike
away.
Douglas?
Yeah, Mike Douglas. Mike Douglas, the Mike Douglas show, okay? Can you believe this? He was my next door, across the street. He was my neighbor. And he said, I got to go to Philadelphia. I got something they want me to do, talk to you about it. And my agent and I got to fly overnight, and I'll be back over the weekend. They're making an offer for me to do a show, and I'll let you know. I'll be in touch when I get back. Well, he went. He was there for about 3 days, came back, and he came over to the house, and I was, matter of fact, having breakfast that morning. He came in and did, come on in, Mike, have a cup of coffee. He says, well, I got the phone call that I thought that I would get one of these days, but I didn't know it was, so sudden. We got to sell the house, and I've got to go, and as a matter of fact, I got to leave the wife here to sell the house, and I've got to get going in a couple of days. I'm going to do a show, and it's going to be called the Mike Douglas Celebrity Television Show.
Wow.
Yeah, couple of days. Yeah, they left, and his wife sold the house. They were only there for about 2 months, and sold the house, and the rest is history. The Michael Douglas show went on for I don't know how many years, and of course,
extremely entertaining. Growing up,
multi-millionaire, so wealthy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, gentlemen,
nice people.
This has been terrific. I want to get to Ronnie Rabinovitz, and Ronnie again was a friend of Jackie Robinson's, and I want Ronnie to talk to you a little bit about the crossing of the line. You were right there. Those were the years when Jackie came up.
Well, he lived in Stamford, Connecticut,
Right, he did. Yeah. Well, did you have some interactions with him, Michael?
Yes. Let's see. I was introduced to Andy Robustelli, the Hall of Famer defensive end for the Giants.
Right.
He was like a brother to me. Yeah, we and I were best friends. We talked over the phone at least once or twice a week for many years, and spent time together in California and Connecticut on many occasions. And he was invited at Howard Cosell's house for dinner, and Howard had invited him, instead of having Ralph Branca, Jackie Robinson, and the quarterback that who ran for vice president, Kemp. Jack Kemp for dinner. So Andy said, do you mind? He said, Michael Dante, the actor, Howard, and Howard knew who I was because local yokels, Howard lived in Stamford. And he said, oh, yeah, great, that'll be wonderful. That'll be our group. Now, what a session. And Jackie Robinson, Jack Kemp, Andy Robustelli, and Howard Cosell, and Ralph Branca. And here we are having dinner. I wasn't married at the time. I was single at the time. They were all married. And the conversation that went on, I wish I had a camera or a tape recorder of the conversation and the stories that went on. And Howard Cosell was absolutely, the perfect host and brilliant, absolutely entertaining. And Jackie, it was the first time I ever met Jackie Robinson. And, of course, admiring his talent on the ball field. He was single-handedly could change the course of a ball game at any moment. He was.
What impressed you about him personally? Not his ball playing career. When you met him, what did you come away from?
Well, he had a quality about him. Of course, you couldn't have anybody there that didn't have any semblance of a sense of humor. There was a lot of humor going around, and Jackie had a great smile. And the stories that went around were most appreciative by everyone. Interesting, and most of the time they're humorous. But what I noticed that Jackie was very sincere, very intense about everything, serious-minded man, very intelligent, very articulate, and kind of maybe, I don't know if I use the word a little preoccupied or defensive, having grown up under the umbrella of the black athlete, the first black athlete to play Major League Baseball, and the odds of succeeding were numerous against him, and he was just incredible what he accomplished. And being the great athlete he was, a lot of people don't realize that he was a terrific tennis player as well.
Yes, he was. And a golf player.
Track and basketball and football. But it was a wonderful tennis
all-around athlete.
Great athlete.
Yeah,
great. But Parcheesi could not play a game of Parcheesi. Had a lot of talents, but had limitations. Like all of us had limitations.
Yeah, I think later Jackie, what really changed his demeanor, personality. His son, died of an overdose or an automobile accident. I forget.
An automobile accident.
It was an automobile. His son had a drug problem, and that really was. I think Jackie broke Jackie's heart, and of course,
Michael, let me just say, and Ronnie will back me up, that when Jackie Jr., I think it was. He went by Junior. Am I correct?
Yes, he did.
Yes.
Died in that tragic automobile accident. He had been clean and sober for a while.
He'd been clean and sober. Yeah.
Oh, he was.
There was no drugs.
I didn't know
there
that.
Was no drugs or no alcohol in his system.
Oh, that's sad.
No, and not only that, he had been counseling himself, a counselor of other
at the
drugs.
Center. That's right. That's right.
Oh my God, I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah.
Well,
So to have a son, to lose him to drugs, then regain him, and then lose him permanently was just too much. And he died in 1971, and his dad the following year, 1972.
That is correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know that. Jackie was there, and the missus was the family, and the daughter
Sharon,
never the same. They were never the same again, of course.
Right.
But on top of everything else, that really was a coup de grace. They just he had so much stress and strain.
Sure.
And, how he survived, I don't know, but he was a great athlete. Great asset to that ball club, and personified leadership quality. His presence in the room was, with all those great athletes and figures, he had a special quality about him that, that he was something very, very special.
He sure was.
All right, as are all of you guys on this panel that gave me one of the best shows I've done in quite a while. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
And I want to say thank you to David, Ronnie, Michael, and Tony, and George. It's certainly been a pleasure, and gee whiz, the time you allotted me, you probably could write a book about me now. It's just
well, if I only had a pencil sharpener, I'd be on my way this morning, Michael.
Well,
I was jotting down the prelude to the book, and boom, the pencil breaks. I would have had another book out and another reason to come back.
Well,
but you don't need one. You're welcome at any time. I also want to announce that Tony D'Angelo has agreed to do a show on this network, and I have a good feeling that you're going to be a steady guest on his show.
That would be a pleasure, Ralph. That would be something I would look forward to.
Great, Tony. That's great.
Yeah. And I hope we can have a reunion with all of us again, and I can let you know what happened at the Ella Dickey Literacy Award and the new next book, The Six Road Home, and then I have a couple more books that I'm going to write after that. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about, and I want to hear about you fellas now that I'm sure you've got lots to talk about with your careers, and that'd be a wonderful thing.
I got a lot to talk to you about, my friend. You think you did some stuff?
I bet. And the wonderful thing, Ralph, I know that you know better than I do, that I learned about my radio show. My radio show, and I wish I learned earlier in my career as an actor, radio show is not about talking, it's about listening.
Exactly right.
Oh, boy, what I learned when I did my show for 12 years, and just sit back and listen and react to the talent on the other end. It was such a joy, and did it help my acting career? It certainly did.
Hey, who was your first guest on the radio?
You won't believe it. My first was Alice Faye and Phil Harris. Now, can you top that? Phil knew more about radio than any man I ever met in my life. He had a radio show, his own, radio show in New York. That's where he started. He started in radio. And Phil was a sweetheart. He was full of humor. It was always humor, and he had king of the one-liners. He had one line after another that was so descriptive, and Alice was a doll. And any time I called Phil, speaking of one-liners, every time I would call Phil and he wasn't home, and I'd call him, I said, and on the other end, he said, well, this is Phil Harris, you know what to do. Leave your name and your number and the time you called, and I'll get back to you. And he said, and speak slowly, because this machine hates rap. You imagine? He had one-liners, I tell you, were stoppers. He was
a great Dodger fan, Phil Harris, if I remember.
Yeah, he was really a wonderful human being. We had more lunches together, and he had another little what he called his ranch, and he had where his group they played cards and told stories, and I was invited to it several times. And the one time he had an old timer there that was in real estate, and I went up and I spoke with him, and he said, "Come on up and have a drink," and so forth. And they said all the drinking buddies and played cards and told stories. So I said, "Well, it's lunchtime. I'm going to stop about and get some Mexican food and some things we could munch on." He said, "Oh, great, okay, Michael." So I went and got some stuff, and I brought it up there, and we were munching on lunch and so forth. And when the fellow in real estate says, "I got to tell you a story, Michael. I made all of these guys rich." I said, "What? Well, what happened? What happened? What'd you do?" He said, "You know that strip of land over there in Palm Desert, El Paseo, where all those beautiful stores are, up and down the strip there?" He said, "Yeah." Well, that was nothing but sand dunes and a couple of little hotels a long time ago. And when we were all hanging out playing cards and so forth, I was playing cars in those days, and I kept saying to those guys, you got to buy the real estate. This land over here, he said, I know it's not, it's nothing on it. There's a lot of sand dunes and so forth, but it's going to be the hot spot and Palm Desert, and that strip is going to be, it's going to be fantastic, and the land is going to be worth a fortune. Yeah, they said, okay, yeah, fine. They kept playing cards and so forth and so on. So finally one day they got so disgusted with it, they said, well, how much do you want? What do you need? He said, well, give me $5,000 apiece. There were 5 guys playing. Give me $5,000 apiece, and I'll take care of the rest. And I'll guarantee you everything. If you don't make your money back, I'll give you the money. And he said, all right, we got nothing to lose. Fine. They all wrote out a check, $5,000 each to him and so forth. Well, each one of those guys, the strip of land there, I know that the one strip that Phil had, he had his offices there and so forth. And so it was worth, I think he said something like $1.5 million, Michael. I sold it for $1.5 million down the road. And everybody that, the 5 guys, all their property, the prime property up and down El Paseo, which is compared to Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, the fashion center of Beverly Hills, California.
Wow!
Just the shops were just as beautiful. Today, it's restaurants there are so beautiful, and these guys all made $1 million.
And that was when $1 million was a lot of money.
Yeah.
Whereas today it's it's still a lot of money.
God knows how much that property is worth today. I mean, it's just incredible, beautiful shops and restaurants, the finest clothing and art shops in the world. There, some of them are worth priceless. But that's
we are definitely up against it on the clock, Michael. May I end the show by asking you to maybe pass this on, and the audience, if you enjoyed any of our offerings on the network, please box up some lightly used children's books, and wherever you are, there's a Head Start program. Take the books down there, get kids reading, get their noses out of the devices and the video games, get them to develop a passion, and get them to be school ready, because basically we have messed up the world a little bit along the way, and it's going to take the kids of the future to fix it, and we got to get them reading. So
I can't agree with you more, Ralph. I can't agree with you more. I've got some books. As a matter of fact, I've got a garage with about 10 shelves in there that I've got to. I certainly have to go through, and I've got a lot of the children's books. I'm glad you reminded me of that, because you're so right. They're not reading anymore. They're not talking to one another either.
No,
not only reading, but they're not talking to one another. They're talking into these iPods and these smartphones, and in the future it's even going to it's going to even get I would say not better and worse. It's going to be both. It's going to get the technology is going to be better, but it's going to be worse as far as communication is concerned, because technology is going to be so they'll have a little something on the ring or on their wrist or on their ear, and they'll be listening to it all day and not have to refer to what they have today. It's sad. I agree with you 100%. It's not good. It's not healthy. They should be talking to one another.
Let me turn it to George Case, and it's your show, Mr. Case. We didn't hear much from you. I'd like you to close it out. Hello? Uh-oh. Did I lose you all?
No.
I'm here.
No, I'm here.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here, George?
No.
No,
you're not.
All right. Well, then,
if we could close it out, but
thank you very much.
I'd like for people to Google the Marshfield Cherry Blossom Festival 2018 on Facebook. Go on Google, and it's called the Marshfield Cherry Blossom Festival 2018 on Facebook, and that's where I'll receive the Ella Dickey Literacy Award.
Terrific.
In April. That'll be
on
the 26th, 7th, 27th, and 28th. And if they want to buy a book, just email me or write me, Michael Dante, Enterprises, Inc., Box 883, Rancho Mirage, California, 92270. That's Michael Dante, Enterprises, Inc., Box 883, Rancho Mirage, California, 92270. And they can get purchase my autobiography and Winterhawk's Land, my latest book.
And a portion of that money goes to help the shy.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Dante, Mr. Michael, this was terrific. We will
Michael,
be back
thank you. It's wonderful.
next week.
Thank you, Michael.
And
Thank you.
very appreciative of all you guys' time. Makes my Sundays just a pleasure. What we're going to do, got to pause for the cause. Michael Preminger and David Hubler will call back at the top of the hour. Is that good for you guys?
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, sure.
Is that all right, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. Just got to pause a little bit, and we'll be back next week, ladies and gentlemen. Adios, everybody.
Thanks, Ralph.
Hey, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.